Hey, hello everyone, and welcome to this beautiful new week. Are you ready to get going once again? Let us remind ourselves, in this physical experience, we just have one life, just one. So why aren't we running like we are on fire towards our wildest goals and dreams? Today I want to dive into 6 different mindset secrets. And these 6 different secrets are also known as the higher faculties of the mind. And then you might be wondering, so why are they secrets? Well, they're not really secret, but they're just not generally known. They're not taught in general education. So let us go over them, because these mindset secrets, these higher faculties are our true powers. We experience the world in the physical sense through our senses. We can hear, we can smell, we can see, we can taste, and we can touch. Most people base their world upon what is going on in their outer world, not the masters of thought. The true masters, the true creators of their own destiny, they live the other way around. They live from the inside out instead of from the outside in. So they shut off their senses and they use the higher faculties of the mind to create life instead of to be a creature of circumstance. So let us dive in. What are these 6 mindset secrets? They are our perception, our will, our imagination, our intuition, our reason, and our memory. These 6 higher faculties of the mind are our true powers. These higher faculties of the mind give us the power to determine what we accept and what we reject. And that which we accept into our lives, into our minds, into our heart, or also called our subconscious mind, sometimes referred to as universal intelligence, that must, by universal law, turn into form. So, in the coming 6 live events that I'm doing, as you might have noticed by now, that I'm doing them every even day during weekdays, except on Sundays. And the coming 6 times I'm going to have a little bit of a deeper dive into these different higher faculties of the mind. But let's just take for today, let's give ourselves a brief overview of what they are. Let's start with the perception. And the perception is that we have is how we perceive things, how we perceive the world around us, how we perceive something to be either a problem or an amazing challenge. And Wayne Dyer might stated it most beautifully on how we can look at our perception and what our perception is. Wayne Dyer stated, if we can change the way we look at something, the thing we look at changes. And this is the power of our perception. Every single thing has just as much good in it as that it has bad in it. If something that you perceive to be really, really bad into your life, then that same thing is also really, really good. That is by universal law, the law of polarity. So when something is a huge problem, it is probably also a huge opportunity. That is a beautiful way of describing it through how the Chinese use 2 strokes of a brush to create the word crisis. And the 1 stroke of the brush means opportunity. And the other stroke of the brush means danger. So in every crisis is just as much opportunity as there is danger. It just depends upon how you want to perceive it. What is your perception towards that crisis? Are you going to see that crisis? And it doesn't matter if it's a financial crisis or a pandemic crisis, or a war crisis. We've had all of them in the past decade or two. So how have you perceived them? Did you change the way you looked at it, and you were going to take a deep dive, and you were like, all right, let me look at the opportunity here, instead of let me only focus upon the danger here. So that is our perception. And then we've got our will. And our will is also something amazing. When President Kennedy asked Dr. Werner von Braun what it would take for us to get a human being, put him or her in a rocket, and bring them safely to the moon and back to Earth, Dr. Werner von Braun didn't go into any complicated things. He simply stated the will to do it. And so they decided they were going to do it before the end of the decade. And through the will, that ability to focus on one thing with the exclusion of all others until it is achieved, got them to realize their pursuit. And so they did. They put a man on the moon and brought him safely back to Earth. And that is through the power of will. Of course, many other things come into play, but it starts with your will to hold that idea on the screen of your mind with the exclusion of all others and focus upon it until it is accomplished. Then we've got our memory. And our memory is perfect. It is fascinating how often you come across people and you introduce yourself, or someone else introduces him or herself to the other person. And about 5 to 10 seconds later, it's like, oh sorry, what was your name again? We don't have to be like this. We can train our memory to be perfect because our memory is a higher faculty of our mind. And to exemplify this, also let's refer to Wayne Dyer again. When he taught semesters in university on certain topics, he wanted to prove a point to his students. And every first class, during every semester, he took the whole class. So I think they were like 1 hour or 90-minute classes. He took the whole class to have everybody learn each other's names. How did he do this? He went from the first student and asked the student, all right, introduce yourself. And then the next student, introduce yourself, but first repeat the person that introduced himself before you. And so he went student by student by student, so that when he arrived at the 50th or at the 70th student, that student would not just introduce himself, but introduce all the 70 students. And by the second class, everybody had heard their names and other people's names from that class so often that it was through spaced repetition ingrained in their mind. And he didn't go over this and almost wasted the whole class just to like teach everybody's names. He did this to prove a point, that our memory is perfect and that we can train our memory to remember anything and everything whenever we need it. It's not that everything will always constantly be on the screen of your mind, but like when you train your memory, whenever you need whatever is in your memory, it will come to you. And then we move on, let's move on to reason, the higher faculty called reason. And our reasoning power is basically that power in our conscious mind that gives us the ability to either accept or reject an idea. If we accept an idea, we become emotionally involved with it. And when we become emotionally involved with it, it turns our body and our whole being into action. So if we get emotionally involved with a negative idea, if we accept a negative idea, we move faster towards that negative idea. So if we reject the negative idea, we can withhold ourselves from moving towards the negative. And so we can consciously decide to accept only the positive, to think only about the positive and the good things. Even if something is a huge problem, you're not going to look at it as a huge problem, you're going to look at it as a huge opportunity, or something that's going to build your character to the new level you. Then what is next? Let's move us to our imagination. And our imagination is, I don't know exactly anymore how Napoleon Hill put it, but somewhere in the lights of our imagination is our most marvelous, miraculous, powerful thing that the world has ever seen. And why is this? This is simply because we as human beings with our conscious mind are able to create any picture that we so choose. And by holding that picture on the screen of our mind with our will, by focusing on that picture, we can turn that picture into form. Because when we can see it in our mind, we can hold it in our hand, as Bob Proctor always stated. And then, last but not least, we've got our intuition. And our intuition is that God-given ability to read people's energy. And a beautiful way of describing this is, for example, you also probably have experienced it before, when you stood somewhere in the street or somewhere in the shopping mall and someone was looking at you, but from behind. But you felt, you knew someone was looking at you. And that is that ability, that intuition, that ability to pick up energy. Or when you just know that something is wrong. You got that feeling in your gut that you shouldn't do it. That is your intuition. And your intuition, that ability to read energy, is about never wrong. Because that intuition is your straight line, your connection to universal intelligence. So those are our higher faculties, and I'm going to do my best to give you a little bit of a deeper dive into them throughout the coming 6 episodes. Our perception, our will, our reason, our imagination, our intuition, and our memory. Let's train them, but let us not train them all at the same time. Let us train them one by one, so that we can truly master ourselves and can become creators of circumstance instead of creatures of circumstance. Thank you very much for listening, and I would love to wish you a wonderful day, my friends. Live with love and live with passion and make it an awesome week.